If I had to sum up today's entire video in a single word, it would be disingenuous. We've all seen companies and organizations pretend to care about very serious issues so they can distract you from the fact that they're doing a bunch of shady stuff. Why read this article about our CEO flying hundreds of miles on a private jet when you can just read this PR statement we put out about sustainability and how we care about it so much? So having seen my fair share of situations like that, I really didn't think anything could surprise me at this point. Until I saw the organizers of the internet's biggest writing event put out a statement saying, sure, our whole shtick for the last 20 or 30 years has been promoting writers, but this year we're also going to be supporting AI users in a writing challenge. And if you disagree with someone ChatGPTing their way to a novel, then it's actually because you're ableist, classist, and possibly even racist. So there's obviously a lot to unpack there, but before we get into this new form of bigotry called criticizing AI on the internet, welcome. My name is D'Angelo, and I am your professor of fiber optical illusions, which is a very real degree that I definitely do have. Or maybe this is just me broadcasting myself talking in my room like YouTube used to be. And in today's lecture, we're going to cover what is undoubtedly the dumbest statement I have ever seen anybody put out in regards to AI. And as you can imagine, this did not go over well with writers, who, as it turns out, already had quite a few problems with NaNoWriMo due to unrelated controversies. And if you're wondering how scandalous can an online writing challenge possibly get, just you wait. Writers and their frustration towards NaNoWriMo have been bubbling under the surface for a while now, but it's finally come to a head, and the backlash is so intense that NaNoWriMo quite literally fell apart, losing sponsors and board members overnight. So how the heck did we get here? I'm going to break it all down. The challenge that NaNoWriMo offers is pretty straightforward, hence its broad appeal. Can you write a 50,000 word novel manuscript in just 30 days? This challenge has happened every November since 1999, and it's unfolded into a whole series of sub-challenges, an entire online community, and it's all run by an organization called National Novel Writing Month, or NaNoWriMo. It's all fairly niche, but within the niche, it's huge, with over 400,000 writers participating in 2022. And with over 50,000 writers meeting their goal that year, it's clear to see why NaNoWriMo is generally considered to be a good thing. After all, you're basically just empowering and encouraging people to create things. So how wrong could that truly go? Well, it seems like the organization was determined to find out, because their list of controversies could probably fill a 50,000 word manuscript all by itself. Now, before we take a look at this, I just want to say most people do not realize this NaNoWriMo controversy has even happened. I think for a lot of people, it's something you try one time and then maybe you don't follow it super closely outside of that. I know that was definitely my experience when a writer friend encouraged me to try it in college. And if you're wondering if I did write a 50,000 word manuscript, of course not. I think I was 300 words in and I was like, okay, this is good. This is fine. I tried though, so I didn't hate it, you know? But with me sort of checking out of the nano community after that, I was one of the many people who did not realize that all of this happened. Discords, forums, and a decade's worth of allegations. How NaNoWriMo ignited a revolution against it. Now, you know a controversy is in depth when you have to start off with a glossary, so I'm sure you'll understand me saying that this whole thing is kind of out of the scope of today's video. Otherwise, we would literally be here all day. But here is a very abridged version of why the people who are the most familiar with NaNoWriMo are actually its biggest critics. Many were unhappy with the sponsors that Nano chose to accept. What with Nano being a nonprofit, it aligns itself very closely with several companies, but users considered a couple of those companies to be predatory towards writers, offering a business model where the author, quote, pays the costs and surrenders a large portion of the rights to their work. So keep the fact that Nano runs into trouble with its sponsors in mind, because it's going to come up again and again. Another huge issue is that last year, Nano was criticized for failing to take action against grooming allegations. Grooming, which was allegedly being facilitated by users through NaNoWriMo's forums. The details of this situation and the way Nano handled it or failed to handle it are very extensive. In fact, this Reddit post has a part 2 where they just continue right from where they left off. And this isn't just like rambling or a rant. This is a very detailed account that makes it pretty obvious that Nano dropped the ball. Seriously though, there's like also a Google Doc, and it goes over even more things, and I genuinely can't get into it in this video. But the situation resulted in NaNoWriMo themselves responding by completely wiping the online forums from the face of the internet. Online forums cannot serve as safe and welcoming community spaces without a large enough team of well-trained moderators. Our growth has outpaced the resources in place to support us. They did make sure to say, though, that the vast majority of complaints sent to the board have not been verified, including claims about child grooming. And it's like, on one hand, you're saying you clearly did not have the resources to monitor what was happening on your website, but on the other, you're saying there's no proof that any of this stuff was happening on our website. Even just from a cursory glance, NaNoWriMo definitely handled this in the worst way possible. So you've got shady sponsors, a grooming allegation scandal, and the third thing that really set people off before this bigger controversy we're going to get into actually involves the very same topic: AI. So last year, NaNoWriMo published a statement saying that while they can't really stop you from using AI because the challenge is based on the honor system, using ChatGPT to write your entire novel would defeat the purpose of the challenge. Though they seem to have no issue with using AI to assist your creative process, whatever that means. But it turns out Nano would tell us what that means, because across multiple blog posts that are really sponsored content disguised as a tutorial, like how to get unstuck during your Camp NaNoWriMo project, they offer advice like go outside, try writing stream of consciousness, or use AI. And not just any AI. Rephrase by Pro Writing Aid is a brand new feature meant for writers like you. Sign up now for Pro Writing Aid to get access to Rephrase and more than 20 in-depth writing reports. Pro Writing Aid is, of course, a sponsor of NaNoWriMo. Now, this idea of using artificially generated content in your writing challenge obviously did not sit well with people, as it didn't really seem to align with Nano's overall mission of helping more people write. So to use words that you did not write in a challenge to reach a specific word count is obviously kind of ridiculous. They wound up catching flack over this on places like Tumblr and other small NaNoWriMo related communities. And I guess that didn't really sit right with Nano, because this year they tried to get ahead of it by releasing this. I can't believe NaNoWriMo is endorsing a person/company who does insert whatever you want. So this is an article that Nano posted just a couple of days ago, because I guess they did not want a repeat of last year. NaNoWriMo is not in the business of telling writers how or how not to write, taking a position on what approaches to writing are legitimate versus illegitimate, or placing value judgments on personal decisions that are a matter of free choice. I do think this is funny because they literally were telling people how to write last year, saying, hey, use Pro Writing Aid's AI features. But while their verbiage last year was very much centered around using AI to revise something you had already written, this year they decided to go all in on the concept of just generating things from scratch using AI tools. And what might be prompting this sudden change, you might ask? The fact that Pro Writing Aid doesn't just help you rewrite nowadays, but it's also pointing out how it can help you generate things from scratch. So while last year using ChatGPT to write your entire novel would defeat the purpose of the challenge, this year opinions about correct ways to write or right versus wrong kinds of writers should not be brought into our spaces. There is no kind of place for that virtue signaling within NaNoWriMo. To be clear, there's no virtue signaling if somebody is concerned about using generative AI tools in a creative writing challenge. Throw in the fact that these tools are notorious for being trained on the work of other writers without their consent, and the fact that NaNoWriMo is trying to write this all off as shaming or virtue signaling is honestly just very disappointing. Though as you can see, it's already in line with their tendency to deflect criticism and wind up in shady situations due to their sponsors. But even at that, this post didn't really make much noise because it wasn't saying much other than stop being mean, guys. And I think part of the reason this slipped under the radar is because technically they did not say AI generated at all. I can't believe NaNoWriMo is endorsing a person/company who does blank. Technically, you could read this entire statement as not being about generative AI. Sure, it's about legitimate versus illegitimate ways to write. And sure, they're basically saying, guys, stop being mean to our sponsor. But they technically didn't say which sponsor, and they didn't say which wrong versus right ways to write people were talking about. Overall, I think that initial statement was terrible. Even just the title of making fun of people who are concerned is extremely unprofessional. And then saying, don't bring your concern concern into our spaces is just such an aggressive way of dealing with people. And then top that all off with the fact that they were too weaselly to even point out the fact that this was about AI. It's definitely one of the worst statements I've seen, but trust me, they were about to outdo themselves in a way that you could not predict. So I guess if you had any lingering doubt in your mind about what if they weren't talking about AI, lucky for you, they followed this up mere days later with, what is NaNoWriMo's position on artificial intelligence? Now, I think we already know their position considering who they're being sponsored by. However, they've taken "we support AI" into a territory that I can only describe as unhinged. NaNoWriMo does not explicitly support or condemn any approach to writing, including the use of AI. The funny thing is, if they had left it at that, I wouldn't even really be able to say they're definitely AI supporters, what with them saying they're technically not. But I'm pretty sure any objectivity that they're claiming to have went out the window with this next paragraph. We believe that to categorically condemn AI would be to ignore classist and ableist issues surrounding the use of the technology, and that questions around the use of AI tied to questions around privilege. When I saw that, I couldn't help but think of this one clip from SpongeBob.
Oh, so now the talking cheese is gonna preach to us.
But instead of talking cheese, just insert organization who mishandled grooming allegations, was already in hot water for aligning yourself with shady sponsors, and is now very clearly flip-flopping their opinion on AI just based on the whims of their new sponsors. Let's go ahead and see what they have to preach to us about privilege, ableism, and classism. I am seated. Classism. Not all writers have the financial ability to hire humans to help at certain phases of their writing. For some writers, the decision to use AI is a practical, not an ideological one. I'm telling you, if somebody uses the word ideology, you better watch out. There's like a 75% chance that the thing they're describing is not in fact an ideology. Concern over artists getting their work ripped off? Not an ideology issue. Very obviously pointing out that if you generate something, then you didn't write it. Definitely not an ideology issue. But no, according to NaNoWriMo, me even saying this right now is a form of classism, aka discrimination against people who have fewer resources. The financial ability to engage a human for feedback and review assumes a level of privilege that not all community members possess. So this is a low-key promo for Pro Writing Aid's ability to help revise or edit your work. But here's why this is so ridiculous to me. You 100% can find online communities where people will volunteer to beta read your work for free. I'm not talking about begging people to give you free labor. People offer this. This is a very built-in staple of the writing community. And with NaNoWriMo supposedly being a writing community, to pretend like they don't know this and make it sound like actually some people have to use AI, I just find that so very disingenuous. Making a point that you don't see anything wrong with writers analyzing or revising their work with AI tools is one thing, but trying to make it sound like if you do have a problem with that, you're being classist because the people doing this have to do this due to their financial situation. Disingenuous doesn't even begin to cover that. But the classism was really just the tip of the iceberg. Now let's go ahead and get into the ableism, aka discrimination against people who have disabilities. I'm not gonna lie, for me, this paragraph was honestly bordering on rage bait. You'll see what I mean. Ableism. Not all brains have the same abilities, or not all brains have same abilities. Maybe you guys should have revised this with Pro Writing Aid. But anyways, not all brains have the same abilities, and not all writers function at the same level of education or proficiency in the language in which they are writing. Great. So far, so true. Some brains and ability levels require outside help or accommodations to achieve certain goals. And it's like, okay, true? But you have done the same thing here where you have taken one issue that does exist, like classism or ableism, and you are just using it to ask people to stop criticizing you for promoting these AI tools in a creative writing challenge. The notion that all writers should be able to perform certain functions independently or is a position that we disagree with wholeheartedly. That's great, but this is not what people were saying. So where do we go from here? Like, this has got to be the clearest example of a straw man I've seen all week. You're defending yourself against nothing, basically. There's a wealth of reasons why individuals can't see the issues in their writing without help. Now, This sentence, to me, is actually ableist. As somebody who does have disorders that can severely limit my ability to produce work at times, this feels so very condescending to me. And I'm just over here writing YouTube videos sometimes. What about the countless published authors, some of whom have released very classic works, who dealt with a range of disabilities, or whose brains may not function at the same level of education or proficiency, etc.? Does NaNoWriMo think that these individuals can't see the issues in their writing without help? Because if so, that would be ableism. The ableism that you're concerned about, the people saying, hey, this sponsorship seems out of place and to not really align with your goals, they are not saying anything about disabled people. But y'all are. And you seem to be very heavily implying that without generative AI, their work is somehow inherently flawed due to their disability. This is absolutely, I think, the worst AI take I've seen. Y'all really should have spent some of that sponsorship money on a PR team, because the fact that you are even okay having your name on this is absolutely crazy to me. How did something with this many spelling errors and this much inherent nastiness even make it out into the world? Something about this post and the last one just seems so aggro for some reason. Like, you couldn't even stop to check your own grammar. You couldn't stop to ask anybody with a disability if this sounded right to them. Y'all just had to rush this out there as soon as possible because you can take the sponsorship money, but you can't take the criticism. Very interesting. But what if I told you it got worse though? Would you believe me? Because in addition to classism and ableism, they have another section called General Access Issues. All of these considerations exist within a larger system in which writers don't always have equal access to resources along the chain. For example, underrepresented minorities are less likely to be offered traditional publishing contracts, which places some, by default, into the indie author space, which inequitably creates upfront cost burdens that authors who do not suffer from systemic discrimination may have to incur. That was a lot of words to say that you guys think Black people need generative AI because they're not going to get picked up traditionally and therefore won't be able to afford to edit their own stories. And not just Black people, underrepresented minorities. I just inserted myself there as an underrepresented minority. Feel free to do the same. I truly do not believe there is like any positive way of reading this statement. Y'all really just sat there and said, oh, you're criticizing us for financial decisions we made? Okay, well, you don't like disabled people, poor people, or minorities. So there, like, real talk, trying to use marginalized groups as a shield to deflect criticism over your alignment with this corporate sponsor of yours. I'm sorry, but this has got to go down as one of the worst online statements from any organization I've ever read. Anyway, they have this other paragraph that I honestly don't care about because I'm gonna be real with you, this genuinely sounds like Donald Trump levels of cope. Our events with a connection to AI have been extremely well attended. Further proof that this programming is serving members who want to know more. This is just sad. I'm almost tempted to say whoever wrote this did not show it to a single other person. Anybody could have pointed out that that sentence truly just makes them sound so desperate. How can AI be bad if we're throwing AI events for AI enthusiasts and those enthusiasts are attending? For all of those reasons, we absolutely do not condemn AI, and we recognize and respect writers who believe that AI tools are right for them. We recognize that some members of our community stand staunchly against AI for themselves, and that's perfectly fine. As individuals, we have the freedom to make our own decisions. Whoever wrote that, 0 out of 10. Less than 0 out of 10. You get a solid -10 out of 10 from me. What? Thus says this tweet reacting to this stance, which racked up almost 5 million views. And I think confusion was a very valid and very common response. How is being against using a computer program to write for you ableist? So is having talent now considered privilege? And the RAI part is short for right. AI produced material is not written. I really like this reply though. Many writers are disabled, some of them profoundly Apparently so. And writers who have lost the ability to write as they once did have found ways to continue writing. Terry Pratchett had Alzheimer's and lost the ability to type, and he was able to turn to dictation and continued creating. And this is true. As you can see in this NPR author interview, he was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, yet he continued to write using dictation software. And that is actually why the stunt Nano pulled is so disgusting, because there are conversations to be had about accessibility in the arts. What they're saying is true. Some people do need tools to help them create things, tools that other people may not need if they don't have that condition or disability. That is a real issue that is worth talking about, but to try to commandeer this issue and apply it to something that has nothing to do with it, all just so people will stop criticizing your sponsor, is just completely wrong. Not all writers have the financial ability to hire humans to help edit. Wow, tragic. It would be cool if there was some kind of online community where writers could support each other for free. And this Redditor is of course referencing the fact that NaNoWriMo used to have forums where the exact kind of thing they're pretending is impossible could very well have been facilitated, but instead the only thing being facilitated was alleged grooming. Therefore, those forums are no more. So that really does add an extra layer of, you've got to be kidding me. Poor people are bad writers and need AI to help. Wow, very inspirational, NaNoWriMo, right? As if the average NaNoWriMo user has a team of hired editors. Give me a break. But don't worry, it's not just poor people, it's also people with disabilities and any minority. Ever. As a disabled writer, I'm furious about this. Disabled writers do not need the immortal theft machine to write because we lack the ability to be creative without plagiarism. Encouraging AI is a slap in the face to all writers, and this excuse is appallingly ableist. It definitely was ableist and delusional and like every minority at the same time-ist somehow. I'm actually starting to think that statement was like a new world record in a way. Was that mathematically the largest number of people that they could possibly have pissed off? I kind of feel like it was. Also, speaking of writers being very upset by this, you know how I said whoever put that up, it feels like they didn't run it by anybody? Well, NaNoWriMo has writers on their board. And yeah, turns out they did not run it by them. Hello, NaNoWriMo. This is me officially stepping down from your writer's board and urging every writer I know to do the same. Never use my name in your promo again. In fact, never say my name at all and never email me again. Thanks! I think this is a great response. To NaNoWriMo, please remove me from the writer's board of the Young Writers Program. I want nothing to do with your organization from this point forward. So apparently, whoever is in charge of caping for their sponsors just completely blindsided the actual writers who are attached to this organization. And I believe them because, I mean, let's be real, what writer would have allowed somebody to publish that? But writers weren't the only thing Nano was losing. We're stepping down as a NaNoWriMo sponsor. Here's why. So the company Ellipsis, which was previously a sponsor for NaNoWriMo, says that they strongly disagree with NaNoWriMo's recent statements regarding generative AI. That's why we've decided to end our sponsorship of the organization. So obviously, at this point, when you're losing sponsors and writers and just your general members, you would have to say something. And this is the something that they had to say. We've edited this post by adding this paragraph to reflect our acknowledgement that there are bad actors in the AI space who are doing harm to writers and who are acting unethically. So they still find the categorical condemnation for AI to be problematic for the reasons they listed. In other words, they're not sorry for anything, but they are troubled by situational abuse of AI, and that certain situational abuses clearly conflict with our values. But ultimately, they're saying AI is just too big and too nebulous to outright reject, which, if I can rephrase that for them, that sponsorship money was a little too big for them to reject their sponsor. As it stands, NaNoWriMo is still trying to host their AI events, but I mean, with 20 likes and 200 people commenting, it's safe to say a lot of people have just kind of moved on. Destroying your entire brand overnight in defense of AI is wild. Get your brand manager on the horn and tell them to whip out the crisis book. I genuinely do not believe that they have a PR person. I know that that's crazy for something that claims to have over 500,000 members now, but if they do have some sort of PR rep, there's no way that they took any of their advice. Using disabled people as your shield is ableism, by the way. And as this person so succinctly put it, it's really cool how you guys just torpedoed your entire reason for existing. But yeah, whoever wrote that, I would like you to do reverse NaNoWriMo, where in the month of November, do your darndest to not write anything at all. don't write anything at all. It's going to be a challenge, so I suggest you start practicing now, and you can stop once you realize that members of marginalized communities don't exist solely for you to deflect criticism. Until then, I'm really not trying to hear it. But that's my take on the situation. Dave's take is that he'll see AI as a creative threat when it can someday generate something as beautiful as him, which will obviously never happen. And of course, I'm excited to hear your take. I mean, this is the part of the video where a layman would ask you to subscribe, like the video, or leave a comment, but I will ask you to enroll, evaluate the video, and submit your feedback. Because I am, of course, running a 100% completely not AI generated, I promise it's real, all the way accredited, somewhat not really university. I mean, just ask anybody in the student body and they'll confirm it for you. We're totally legit. And as for me, whether you'll see me in 24 hours or 24 months is honestly anyone's guess, but until then, thanks for watching. Your homework for today is to write at least one word that came from your real brain, something AI could never do.